We're live on YouTube. Your hand is covering the
Let us be quarreling on the YouTube.
Ah,
7:28. That 3 minutes is important.
Good morning.
You can come in 3 minutes.
I was gonna say, I think. She did. I don't know where is Valentine function this week.
Because if we are not upstairs in time.
Because we're not upstairs in time call. It's not my fault that your wife is beating you because
I woke up cranky actually because I woke up very
It's the
early.
same thing we are saying now.
Very early, like 3 o'clock.
I've been up since 2. Do I look cranky? And I went to bed at 10.
What were you doing at 2? What were you doing?
Walk.
Now the reports that I heard to
Walk.
That's the problem with what I do. I have to edit a lot of reports before sending to clients.
I didn't go to sleep until about that time.
I went to bed at 10 and I was up by 2.
I never sleep.
And I had planned to go to bed. I mean, I just came back yesterday. So I had planned to go to bed by 8, but madam decided to keep me up.
Normal. Normal.
You're leaving me. How do you answer that one?
Oh my days.
My name is IBK Spaceship Boss.
People.
The Smooth Breakfast presents the headlines, the stories, the news, in-depth analysis of national current affairs. Freshly pressed on Smooth 98.1.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us for Freshly Pressed 981. It's a segment of Smooth Breakfast on Smooth 98.1 that gives you a chance to go into detailed analysis of our newspaper stories inside of this segment. Of course, Freshly Pressed 981 brings together analysis from Cheta, Wanze, Mr. C this morning, Monday, the 17th of May, 2021. Good morning, gentlemen. Cheta, good morning. Because I didn't call your name. Happy Monday.
How are you?
I'm fine.
See,
Mr. C, good morning.
He's telling lies this early morning. He just told us that he wasn't fine.
Mr. C, how you doing?
Good morning, Valentine. Good morning, Cheta. Good morning, Lagos.
Yes, I love the energy. He's right for a Monday morning. Well done. Join the conversation by sending messages through WhatsApp 0809 444 0981. That's 0809
Good morning,
444
Tayo.
0981. Thank you, Taya, for joining. You can also watch live on YouTube, youtube.com/smooth981fm Lagos. Use the hashtag freshlypress981 to send messages on Twitter. Twitter comments go to Twitter at smooth981fm, hashtag freshlypress981. Our first story, Mr. C talks about 120 billion naira petrol subsidy that, it will go back and forth whether it's been removed, it's been taken away, it's still there. It seems like the suspicion is, it's aimed towards seeing it increase or double as the CBN has adjusted exchange rate. So last night we noticed that the 379 CBN official rate had been removed from the website, but there's no new figure as we speak. The NAFEX rate, the last time which I checked, was about 418, between 412 and 415. Yeah, but Mr. C is seeing this trend. First, the removal of the XD official rate from the website. Is an indication of a new rate being instituted, and what would that be? What are the suspicions?
Okay, thank you, Valentine. So the removal of the previous official rate of 379 naira to a dollar is indicative of a further official devaluation of the Nigerian currency. Now, what has happened is they've moved from 379 naira to the dollar, and they've adopted the rates used at the investors and exporters window. Now, our listeners will be wondering, how does this affect us? Now, this affects us in a number of ways. Now, first things first, the landing cost for petrol when it reaches Nigeria, and in say the last 2-3 months, the exchange rate has at the I&E window has hovered between 408 naira and 412 naira to the dollar. Now, if the landing, we don't need any oracle to tell us that the price is going to go up. And the NNPC is the sole authority, is the sole entity right now importing petrol due to the fact that it's difficult, very difficult to obtain foreign exchange. Now, this will also impact on power. A lot of the pricing components in the power tariff schedule are benchmarked against the US dollar. So as the Naira rate further depreciates, it will affect the pricing components, and even the new tariff, which was supposed to take effect on the 1st of July, will now have to be reviewed again because this was not taken into consideration. Now, it's important to put this at the back of the mind. Why do we have a subsidy? We have a subsidy because the refineries are working and we're tired of shouting, we're tired of complaining. Beyond that, we're tired because nothing's going to happen. Each time they say they're launching a probe, they're investigating, there's some turnaround maintenance that will start. It starts, it never ends. When it ends, you don't understand what has happened. But long story short, there is no petrol being refined in Nigeria. Now, our daily consumption figures for petrol, as said officially, are said to have dropped from 60 million liters to 93 million. Excuse me. Nigeria does not have the infrastructure to support that. I was having a discussion with Chita before the show. Previously, we used to hover somewhere between 33 million and 35 million liters. Okay, thank you. Now, let's not forget, since last year, we've really started work from home. And to some extent, people are still working from home. So how do you, let's even use the official figures for the sake of this conversation. How do you jump from 60 million to 93 million every day?
Assume that more people are burning fuel with their generators.
No, Valentine.
Assume.
Valentine.
Yes.
Even with that,
Our
it doesn't explain.
infrastructure cannot carry 35 million liters per day. Talk less of 93 million.
No, so
Somebody's enjoying
So
himself.
that point's a bigger question. I'm glad you guys raised that because the question I was going to ask was towards the subsidy issue. That's still a bone of contention because you know why I raised that. That subsidy thing has been criticized by experts, mainly, alluding to the fact that that's a major source of corruption, especially as the government is taking hold of that supply chain.
yes, Valentine, let me piggyback off that. The Presidential Economic Advisory Council just last week strongly advised the president to get rid of the subsidy and adopt a price and adopt a price that is reflective, that is truly reflective. Now, we are surrounded by nations. In each of the nations bordering Nigeria, petrol goes for at least $1 plus. Easy.
Closest to us is Nigeria, 97 cents. We are 40 cents, just to put that in context.
So there's
Good
every
for
incentive.
somebody
So
to buy
Valentine,
petrol here and sell it.
yes, there's every
I mean,
incentive.
I would if I can.
If the average man on the street was given 100,000 liters of petrol every day to sell, officially, why would he sell it in Nigeria when he can get double the price or even 2.5 times the price by moving across the border?
So who are the ones benefiting from this?
So there,
See an investigative journalist, Valentine.
so Valentine, it goes without saying that the individuals who are profiting from this, even the official consumption figures are ridiculous. People, I suspect someone somewhere is just writing figures that they cannot justify or defend that figure. It's not possible. But Labour has taken the popular view that we're not going to accept the removal of petrol subsidy. Excuse me. This is reality and not ideals. We cannot, as a nation, collectively continue to exist with a petrol subsidy and a power subsidy, given the depreciating and dwindling cash revenues we receive from crude oil. It's not going to be sustainable long term.
Because as it seems, while we think that subsidy is to the benefit of the common man, it's actually benefiting
A few fat cats.
Thank you so much for putting that well. Abarami Akarikiri sent a message on YouTube, on WhatsApp actually. He says, hello guys, I'd like to clarify the subsidy issue. The NNPC is the sole importer and other marketers take from them at a reduced price. the NMPC takes in the loss. In as much as the crude price goes up, the NMPC will keep selling at a loss. That's the subsidy. NMPC might not be able to best the loss any longer, or bear the loss, you meant to say. So the federal government isn't paying anyone subsidy because but NMPC is making a loss. Okay,
Well, it's the same thing.
it's the same thing you're saying. So,
Just different English. Potato.
but I mean, thank you. But he ends this comments by saying, how will refineries reduce the pump price? The countries with large refining capacity still sell at high
It's
prices.
not about reducing the pump price. It's about the drain on the reserves of the foreign reserves, which brings to all these naira, dollar, wahala that
Yep.
we're seeing. We're essentially subsidizing consumption, which is not what you subsidize. You want to subsidize production.
Our president has flown to France for an African Union meeting, so we look forward to hearing. I don't know how many people are looking forward to that, but I'm actually interested to hear what he
Went
has
to
to say.
some reporters, went to see his doctors.
Nah, that's this day has this next story. The Daily newspaper reports on Clark, the elder statesman and former Minister of Innovation, Chief Edwin Clark. He has cautioned against calls for secession in some parts of the country in reaction to people saying, oh, yeah, Nigeria has broken down, that we should actually save it before it breaks down irretrievably. But Cheta, do you agree with his claims, especially his examples of the Civil War?
I, I'm indifferent, and I think that's where there's a problem for me. I mean, I used to be a very patriotic Nigerian.
You're not anymore.
No,
I'm not.
he still is.
I find it interesting discussion that those of us who are floor members of the society don't have access to, and those discussions are what they are reacting. The Nigerian elite typically does not deal itself with what people like you and me say. We can shout all they care. I have written about the Nigerian paradox quite a number of times before. The Nigerian paradox is that, in all honesty, Nigeria, what is Nigeria, is potentially greater than the sum of its constituent parts. Unfortunately, Nigeria has never been equal to the sum of its constituent parts, talk less of being greater. But the paradox is that geopolitically, the minorities such as Edwin, the so-called minorities such as Edwin Clark's group, are actually better off in a Nigeria because it provides a big umbrella that prevents the domination of their respective spaces by the so-called majority groups. So, for example, so Nigeria is roughly balanced on a tripod. So, in the north, you have the Hausa, Fulani, whatever it's called, dominating the middle belt. In the east, you have the Igbos dominating the Niger Delta, and in the west, you have the Yorubas dominating whoever else they can find. The fact that a Nigeria exists, pitting these three groups against each other, means that the minorities have so-called minorities. It's important to put that so-called have space to breathe, and that's geopolitically for them. It's very important. That is one of the reasons why they will always want a Nigeria. However, for Nigeria to work, three things must exist. First of them, justice. Nigeria is a very unjust country, very unjust. And as long as you are unjust the way we are, you will always have these agitations. Second, equity. I don't feel as Nigerian as there are things that have happened that tell me that I'm seen by certain people in my country who are in leadership positions as a second-class citizen. Equity, very important. And thirdly, honesty. We've not had an honest conversation about why Nigeria. And until we have those three, we'll keep going around in these circles up and down. Now, one thing people need to understand is that the Westphalian nation state was set up for the betterment of the people within its territory. Nigeria is such a Westphalian nation state. All the countries in the world are Westphalian nation states. Before the peace of Westphalia in 1648, what you used to have was largely a few countries here and then city states. The Westphalian nation state, it was set up for the betterment of the people in this country. Nigeria, since 1914, has never worked for more than 10,000 people in its territory at a time. They exist. We need to have this honest discussion so that we can, for want of a better word, restructure the country so that it can work for the majority of people within its territory. No country is sacrosanct, and if the country fails to have this and realign itself to work for the benefit of all, And this will gain legitimacy. Who will challenge this state? On. That's just it's the brutal fact.
But if you put down the pushback for restructuring, for these conversations that you call for, if you put it down to a reason or two, what would you say is the reason? Or are the reasons?
The country know the work, you get light.
Not really.
I rest my case.
So what I was looking to ask, I mean, what I was hoping you would say was, would
There
be
are
things
big
like
guys are right now.
Thank
but
you.
The lights are still on.
selfish interests, people not willing to
We need to
let go of some of the things that
we
they're
need to
holding on to.
understand something. Interests are by nature selfish. I think we have sold ourselves this lie for too long that everything is for the betterment of all, blah 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 shit. Nonsense. Every group in the country has its interest. What we need to do is to have an honest conversation so that we will find out the interests align. Until we have that honest conversation, we'll keep going round and round, and the Kanus and Sunday Igbohos and the Etialas will keep dominating the conversation.
Speaking of which, there's a story I came across in the Guardian newspaper this morning about Mietiala calling on all headers to return to the north, following the invitation by the governor, or rather the agreement by the southern governors to ban open grazing,
Enforce the ban.
enforce the ban.
Because
Your
in
thoughts?
a lot of southern states,
None of the southern states. Okay, well, no, let me rephrase. You have some southern states who have banned open grazing. They keep coming to mind. Open grazing. They've made notice to us that such a has to go through state assemblies. Kind of like this whole Ibubiya nonsense that Southeast governments have been talking about. Not one of them has put a bill in front of the state house of assembly to reach that security outfit. I mean, this is a lesson for my Igbo people. Our governors are crap, but that's another discussion entirely. The point is that Mietiala has, I think, this that will come back to the north after there's enough land here. Which, funny enough, is what the current government just said some time ago.
Yes.
Enough land in the north for open grazing. So you see, when these painful conversations, and it's important to point out that these conversations will be painful, but we need to have them. So when you have this, and I think it's again important to point out that not many people are criminals, but because we are very lazy in this country, we tend to ascribe collective guilt. So Chetachuku once does something, people will say, we know people like this. Coming to Halio does something, people will say, hopeful and enhancement. It's lazy, but we must understand that it's Nigeria. We're lazy people. Now, those who are able to walk will begin to come through. The lazy slots who just want to sleep and wake up and fly off to France and all of that to dominate the conversation. It's clear that it's not working.
Slots by their nature are lazy, aren't they?
Yes.
So going by your first allusion, but another story from the Guardian newspaper here says the headlines: Toxic loans courts may force AMCON's burdens on taxpayers. Please break that down for us, Mr. C.
okay, so AMCON, for the listeners, is the Management Corporation of Nigeria.
Yes.
It was set up to take over the bad toxic loans that banks had inherited over the years. Now, at its inception, the Central Bank of Nigeria did issue a 1.7 trillion bond to cater for the toxic loans. Now, what has happened is properties have been seized and gotten as a result. However, AMCON has been struggling to either sell or lease these properties. And because of its continuing failure and struggle to physical deterioration to the condition of these properties. Now, the managing director of AMCON was warning that if at the end of AMCON's tenure, they're unable to monetize these assets, then the burden, which is put at about 5 trillion naira currently, will be passed on to the federal government and ultimately onto the taxpayers. And he alluded to the fact that litigation was a major stumbling block because AMCON is involved in over 3,000 court cases at the moment.
And they're still piling up.
And they're still piling to do things the way they've done them. And there needs to be a new way. AMCON really has no business. If I were in charge of AMCON, I would make sure those properties are generating revenue. even if I,
in charge.
even if I'm not getting full, if I can get 4% rental income, I would take it. 40% is always better than nothing. Now, beyond that, let's go to the aviation space. Amcon took over Aero in February 2016, and a year from that date, they took over ARIC. In the subsequent years, Amcon had problem recovery, and it's increasingly becoming difficult to sell them to new investors because investors are worried about the huge debt profile. They're worried about the potential of serious litigation against the former owners.
Because if you're buying it, you're buying it liabilities plus the assets.
No, you can
So not
you
just-
can reach an
The way
agreement.
it's supposed to be, Ancon is supposed to like kind of like, you see why you should not be offering my mic. The way it's supposed to be, Ancon is supposed to actually like be that stop help clear off those legacy issues and then sell it off to the owners,
So-
which they haven't done.
So the challenge really for Amcon is about 80% of this 5 trillion naira debt is owed by just 350 Nigerians who are highly placed. So
Yeah,
there's
part of
also
10K elites.
so there's also the political will factors. There is the government really prepared to really go after these guys? That's a question for the government to answer.
Because if you're going to teach someone a lesson beyond just going after them, why not sell off the properties like you say? I mean, 40% is better than 0%,
So
right?
Valentine, these properties cannot be bought by everyone. It's still that same group of people. So
Right.
I'm your friend. They've seized your property.
They want to sell it.
You
I'll,
want to
I'll
sell
buy
it.
it over.
No, I won't buy it. I'll leave it.
No.
I could buy it for you.
If it's a good price, I'll buy it.
Kai.
But that's
Things
the
I
truth.
cannot trust.
But you just said we have to tell ourselves the truth, right?
No, I'm
No,
optimistic.
Valentine, that's not the way it works with the elites sometimes.
Guy, you be my guy. I mean, how-
That's why we have these conversations.
So you're not supposed to take it. So really and truly,
Yes.
Amcon needs new strategies, and it is clear that they need to okay, now let me go back to the aviation angle. They've now set up a new airline called, they are in the process of setting up a new airline called NG Eagle. Now the process certifications at the first stage with the Nigerian Civil Aviation Authority. And they've taken 2 aircraft from ARIC, rebranded them in NG Eagle colors, and they say that is where they will start from. Now, Amcon's current strategy is to run 3 airlines: ARIC, Aero, NG Eagle. The common conventional wisdom suggests that they should merge both Aero and ARIC, collapse the liabilities into one, and then take off from there. But they need to get experts in. They need to acknowledge that the method they've adopted in the past 4 or 5 years hasn't worked. Get the aviation experts in and listen to them, and maybe we'll see a completely different outcome.
Well said. Thank you, Mr. C. Cheta, let's get to this punch story. $1.24 billion spent on food imports despite Buhari's forex ban. I find it interesting that they put his name here, but he's the president. I mean, he's meant to be held accountable in all these things, because the expectation then, at the time of this forex ban, was that it was going to boost local production, hence increase the economy. But what are your thoughts in this inverted trend?
I mean, I worry about the way Punch frames the headline.
Yeah.
We always talk as if importing is a bad thing. It's not. It's trade. And trade is simple. It's a very simple matter of I'm wearing this shirt. I have another at home. You like the shirt, so you give me something in exchange. As time went on, the means of exchange became money. But nevertheless, it is trade. Giving something in exchange for something else. End of story. And then we now have all these other concepts that are built on top. At the end of it, the bottom line is give me what you don't, what I don't have, and I'll give you what you don't have. Now, Nigeria does not produce enough food to feed itself. And unfortunately, Nigeria doesn't import enough because of harebrained ideas such as this forex ban. I'll give an example. We sat here a few days after the CBN announced that they were going to restrict the importation, giving dollars, because at the end of the day, it's a ban. But they use all this highfalutin language to, they say, oh, we're restricting giving you dollars to import maize. And I said, that thing is going to have a very major effect And what do we see now? This is what, just about a year later. Maize has gone up, conflicts has gone up, poultry has gone up. I mean, Panadol has gone up because everything, because there's an entire value chain. And I worry when, for example, a few days after the National Bureau of Statistics told us that inflation is at very high highs, that the CBI came out to announce that they were restricting imports of sugar and wheat. I mean, what that sounded to me was like, if you cannot have bread, go and eat cake. That's what it sounded like to me. Having said that, we need to examine this our food thing by numbers. Because of insecurity issues, and it's very important to keep pointing that out. Insecurity issues means that the 2021 planting season has been delayed. Again, food will come in late from the farming areas, and we don't have enough stored. Nigeria has 33 silos. Maximum storage capacity of those 33 silos is 1.3 million metric tons. The average person eats 2 kilograms per day. So, at the very least, we should be able to store, assuming a population of 150 million people. Some people say that we are more. We should be able to store. Let us assume that's just for the sake of arguments. We should be able to store 300,000 metric tons per day to be able to feed our population. 1.3 million metric tons essentially means that we have capacity for maybe just about 4 days. That's a story for that's so essentially we don't have storage. We're not producing. We have to import. End of story. It's not. This is not rocket science. So what you should do as a responsible government is ease the pressure on your people. My wife sends me out to the market once every 3 cycles now to ensure that, because there was, and it was my mistake. There was a day she came back from a market, and the things that were in the booth were not as plenty as I was used to see. So I made a comment that she did not find funny. The next time that it was time for market, I given her chop money. The woman rioted. I said it was an outdoor price in my house. And she said, "No, you are going to the market." And by the time my children asked me for food, and it was clear that she was not shifting her leg from that accelerator, I went to the market myself. I came back chesting and humbled. It's not funny.
This is my story. Same thing. Same reaction I got from my wife as well. Said she actually made this very simple statement that she dropped a few bags on the till. Actually, a few items on the till, and then the total was mind-boggling. The kind of amounts that seen fill up a full cart before. Unfortunate reality. The next story from the Guardian newspaper: blackout in Kaduna ahead of NLC's warning strike, and that's a story coming from the Guardian this morning, Mr. C. Please, I'd like your take on this, because there's been a backlog of debts owed works in that state. How is this going to go forward? Because the blackout was already started. The warning strike starts today. As I hear, everything, the whole of Kaduna went expressed the outage last night, and it's going to continue for the next 5 days. But what are your thoughts, especially with the ongoing conversations between the government and?
Okay, so the Kaduna state government is one of the state governments in Nigeria that has been struggling with salary arrears and dwindling revenues from the federal government. And the state government did suggest that he was contemplating reducing the size of the state's workforce. Understandably and naturally, the state labor union said they were not having that conversation, and that it wasn't their fault that dwindling cash revenues were coming from the center. And they're proposing a 5-day warning strike. Now, the 5-day warning strike, Kaduna literally is supposed to be shut down. And on Saturday or early on Sunday, the Kaduna Distribution Company shut down ahead of the strike. Now, in their statement, it was a safety measure to protect their facilities. So the head of communications did state that the Transmission Company of Nigeria shut down all the 33 kV lines in Kaduna State ahead of the proposed strike. Now, it is clear that something has to give, and both sides have to reach some form of consensus. However, it is unfair to expect all the adjustments to come from the workers and from the people, whilst the political appointees, the political class, continue to live life as if there is no problem. So if you want to reduce the size of the labor force, are you reducing the size of your political appointees? Are you reducing the size of your state cabinet? Are you reducing your security vote? Are you reducing the amounts that are literally wasted each day?
It's all the part of would that system work in terms of reducing their salaries across borders?
Valentine, you see, in Nigeria, salaries are not where the money comes from.
Right.
It is the allowances that are not published, they're not advertised, you have no idea of. So salaries are minute in the scale of things. It is the allowances the money comes from, plus all the other extracurricular activities they get up to. So slashing salaries is nothing. Because the salaries in the first place are nothing to them. We need, and beyond this conversation, we need to revisit the current reality on the ground. Why do we have 36 states? For what?
Restructuring again. I like how the end of the conversation this morning just took us back to the beginning. It's a cycle. Cheta and Mr. C, conversations this morning. Thank you so much. Mr. C is at Mr. C on all social media platforms. Cheta is at Checksta, CHXTA on Twitter. Follow him and let's extend the conversation with the hashtag Freshly Pressed 981. Stay tuned. My name is Valentine Ohu. Next, we talk sports.
The headlines, the stories.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay.